Good evening. Today we're going to talk about perhaps the ultimate fashion designer practicing today, Prada's menswear collection. If the panel could introduce themselves.
Maarten van der Horst, I'm a designer.
Stavros, Karelis, I'm the founder and buying director of Machine Store.
Hi, I'm Imran Amed, I'm the founder of the Business of Fashion.
I'm Mandi, Lennard, and I run a fashion consultancy called Mandi's Basement, and I write for various websites.
So, how does the panel feel about the state? How do we feel? Because I think a lot of people do consider Prada the ultimate fashion designer. So, I know Mandi doesn't. Opinions. Maarten, let's have you.
I think more fashion label than designer. I think as a label, I think it's incredibly interesting that it's almost this security blanket and it has this stamp of approval that's almost universal. You know, if something is Prada, it's of a certain quality, whatever that quality may be, because people just, you know, attach it by themselves. But it's, I don't know, when I think of Prada, when I walk into a shop, it's like, it's almost successful living. You know what Diesel used to say in their advertisement? It's like successful living. For some reason, I connect that to Prada. And it's this weird, maybe false security blanket. But anyway, that's what I think is really interesting, that it's managed to become this like empire, like brand. I wouldn't say ultimate designer though, I think that's something different, but definitely brand, yeah.
Okay, Stavros?
Well, I think that Prada, even though it's like one of the biggest fashion powerhouses, and her world is a commercial world and not an artist world. Basically, what Prada does uses like her shows as a platform to communicate different messages. And lots of times she asks a question which is always in relation to subjects that are very dear to her, like beauty and age and femininity and masculinity, and ultimately asking a question about what clothing means in the contemporary context. So I think this element makes her very unpredictable, actually, and you know that's why we don't know what we expect from one show to the other show, and everyone is focusing basically to see what Prada is going to design for the next show. She can change basically her whole message 180 degrees from show to the next show without relinquishing any of her brand identity, and it's always remained Prada. And I think also the menswear show is a very, very important show because also for women, because they're paying really close attention. She's setting down the catwalk women model, and they're wearing like women's wear, and lots of people are paying attention to that show because they want to see if there are going to be like any clues that they relate to the fashion women's wear show that is going to follow. And I think she, as a brand, and as Maarten really rightly said so, it is as a brand, and she always sets the trends. She sort of feels that she never follows the trends.
Yeah, that sort of amazing ability to do something that doesn't look right the first time, that 6 months later you're like, oh, I love it.
Exactly. Sort of.
Imran, you're smiling.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what makes Mrs. Prada so remarkable is there's a lot of big commercial powerhouses out there, and there are a lot of very, very creative designers. I think there's very few brands that are both very, very creative and commercially successful. And somehow the magic of Prada is being able to walk that fine line between creativity and commerciality. And to me, that's the power of Prada.
Mandi?
Listen, don't get me wrong, I love Prada, and I enjoy being challenged by fashion, and she's the ultimate sister in the industry because she kind of overcomes barriers of beauty, age that Stavros touched on, and she's almost like a cheerleader for you know, this whole wave of ugly fashion. she's challenging, so she's putting out stuff where at first everyone's reacting, whereas, like you say, 6 months later they've settled down, they can't get enough of it. And in a way, we've seen the influence of that because so many designers do that now anyway. I'm completely amazed by the colour palettes every season, and that has a very big influence on so many areas of culture. And she's a terribly cultured woman. I mean, there's the Prada Foundation that support lots of artists. She's a very formidable presence. You know, when you hear about, I haven't met her personally, but when you hear about people talking about her, she's, I think if you're somebody professional and you want to look like you're intelligent, it's a brand that you would go to. It's got the values that she has dispelled.
Yeah.
But why, Mandi, is it not the ultimate designer then? Why did you react so?
No, I don't like obviousness, and I think that I'm inspired by so many amazing people in fashion, people from the early days, people that are still going. I also think that there's a lot of very small brands who've got very big influence, and I completely respect her position, but for me it's not the ultimate be all or an end all. That's all.
Interesting.
And Imran, in your esteemed publication, I was reading that that the devil in China doesn't wear Prada. That you know, that the idea was, it was somebody we had on this program, Hetty Judah, the other day, and the idea that the elite weren't wearing Prada, so a lot of the corrupt officials, I think it was the favoured labels of the corrupt officials. And there was another piece earlier in the year about how Prada was doing well because it was less obvious, a less sort of glitzy form of luxury.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Beijing a couple months ago, and it's quite remarkable to walk around and just see how much the market has changed. I hadn't been there for about 5 years. I think unlike, say, Gucci or Louis Vuitton or some of the more logo-led brands, you know, Prada is a more understated brand. And I think people in the know will be able to pick out, you know, that whatever we're about to see is autumn-winter 2014 menswear for Prada. But the man on the street, maybe someone who doesn't follow fashion quite as closely, can't tell what it is. And I think, you know, as markets like China see their consumers become more discerning, more informed, more aware of fashion, it's more understated brands that are kind of in the know brands like Prada that are becoming more successful, because you know, it's pretty remarkable. I think the Chinese consumer in a period of a decade has advanced, and of course there's all consumers at all different levels and layers around the market, but you know, speaking generally, that consumer has evolved very, very quickly, say, compared to the Japanese, which took maybe 25 years to arrive at the same place. So brands like Prada are in a very, very good position.
And what's with, you know, because you were just talking earlier about OMA and the furniture from the catwalk, and you know, her work with Rem Koolhaas and the epicenters, and you know, Prada has she's massively sold this idea of architecture as part of her brand. Why do we think that is? Because obviously it has such great synchronicity with menswear.
She's probably very much inspired by architecture as well. I think a lot of designers have. Some of our favourite designers are trained architects, so there's always been a very close relationship between architecture and fashion. And quite rightly, she's inspired by a lot of these great contemporary architects and has this close relationship with Rem Koolhaas.
But I personally think as well that someone on the level of Prada as a powerhouse, and obviously they've got the Prada Foundation, and because of her background as well in political science, and she's a very socially active person herself, I think that someone that is in her status and level, I think she sort of like feels the responsibility to give back to society something, and through her foundation, I mean, she supports the arts and she supports the music and she supports films, and she definitely wants to support architecture. And I think it is a relationship that is sort of like she gives but she takes as well, as Mandi said, because she gets inspired from architecture. She uses heavily all these architects in her shows, which basically they create a whole entity to present her ideas. But I think as well, in her level, she sort of like gives back to the society through her foundation and through helping the arts. Also.
I mean, I think it's really simple, actually. I think designers find inspiration from different places, and there's certain designers who are very, very immersed in, say, urban culture, or others who are highly inspired by music. It just so happens that architecture is something that is really part of the DNA of that brand, and I think it's great. And the way she integrates it into the shows, I mean, the sets are a big part, so it's always really interesting to watch a Prada show, not just for the collection, but to see the set that she creates and the
before
experience.
that show even starts.
Yeah.
On Instagram, you're seeing this whole world begin.
You literally evaluate as soon as you walk into the venue. You kind of get a sense of so you remember a couple seasons ago the collection with the living room sets throughout. It's pretty incredible.
But also the collection that she did for the Menswear with the muralists and the illustrators, and I think they took, which is all the portraits and the faces, and they took it, and now I think it's in the Dover Street Market in New York, and they have done the Prada show, and they have used these murals in there, which is...
She's actually made an exclusive collection for Dover Street Market in New York.
And she used this set design actually from her catwalk show to Dover Street Market, which is something really brilliant to see, that something that obviously not everyone can go to a show, but then when it's in the store, in a retail space, then so many people can actually visit and see this artwork as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, also with architecture, I think I was talking to a friend of mine that worked at one of the big Italian houses, and she was talking about her frustration with their old-fashioned marketing, and Prada really seems to be the modern, I go on about this quite a lot, but the modern Italian house. And obviously architecture, it's Milan. It is the home of design. I mean, Salone is bigger than any of the fashion weeks in Milan. And so
but also, I mean, especially Rem Koolhaas. I mean, what a perfect partner for Miuccia. They both have this like twisted, surreal ideas about... I mean, I imagine them sitting in some ivory tower, like making up plans. That everyone has to wear Hawaiian shirts next season.
To go to the next floor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually the case. Probably have an ivory tower there.
I've been down the Prada slide when I interviewed her years ago, and she it's a brilliant way to say goodbye.
Is it the same slide that was at Tate Modern?
I think that was bigger, but this one goes from her office and it literally goes through like 2-3 floors, and then you end up in the car park. And it's a wonderful way to say goodbye, because you can't wait. You can't wait to leave because you want to get on the slide. And then you're down there, and she's like, "Bye," and you're like, "Bye," and she's got rid of you, which is quite magical.
I can't wait to see that one day. I've never seen that.
Which was the Italian designer that had that fantastic fountain program? Where they put money towards all the historic fountains in Italy.
Wasn't it Diego della Valle? Or was it was one of the big titans, right? Renzo Rosso
but they've got this program, and I think a lot of these big houses, they do have schemes where they put money back into their kind of culture and what have you.
Well, I think there was this idea that that the Italian state won't do that, don't do that, and so if Prada doesn't have the foundation, that there'll be nothing modern going on in Milan. I mean, it's always the lament of everybody in Milan that the city, has this weird kind of superpower status in a city that perhaps doesn't match up to the superpower status. So before we look at the collection, let's talk about the last 2 seasons, perhaps. I mean, it's felt like the collection you were talking about just then, with the furniture and the colours, that felt like a bit of a comeback, or maybe not a comeback, but a bit of a hey, don't, here I am, I'm the master?
I think it's obvious already for me anyway. Just going to Men's Fashion Week and seeing some of the men's editors socially, they're all wearing it already, and they're all overexcited about it, and they're all going to the supermarket in it. And it's just been, and I can really appreciate it seeing it in the real life context, like the Hawaiian floral graphics with the short sleeve, and it's almost like, oh my god, it's a sweater but it's got short sleeves, and they're wearing it over another piece, and it's quite phenomenal styling for this for now. And all the coats as well, everyone who's seen in the coat first, and obviously there's the Marc Jacobs Anna Wintour who's going to be in the first as well with the women's.
Any other thoughts?
You saw it on other catwalks, sorry.
Yeah, no.
You saw it on other catwalks as well, which I thought is always quite incredible with Prada, because Burberry showed, the same 4-button or 3-button jacket that was in, the 70s collection of a year ago for Prada. And you see the same jackets at Jill Sander this season, which are such rip-offs of what Prada did a year ago, which I think is just insane. But and the Hawaiian stuff, I think it's good that someone can make a Hawaiian shirt look so good. No,
I love her technique of almost going against. It's that kind of thing of whatever's out of fashion will be in fashion, and she really does that. She really sort of goes, I'm just going to do something quite perverse and odd. Like, do you remember, it must be like 4 or 5 years ago now, when she did the collection with the tutus? So it was menswear, but she had like George Barnett from These New Puritans in a little tutu. And now obviously that's like, so many people have done men in lace. But when she did it, it was completely bizarre.
But I think that's kind of like, it's quite Prada actually. I think that if you think about the menswear of Prada, she goes usually 2 ways. The one way is going to be the very simplicity, like perfect lines, right balance. She focusing on color blocking, on perfect fabrics, on all this. It's completely sort of like stripped out of accessories and references and heavy references, and it's like basically the traditional Prada look. And then you go to the other version, which is basically Prada with Spring Summer 14, which was like really heavy reference clothes with really strong prints, and she's got a very strong aesthetic, which I think that it's a very smart way to approach it, because Prada right now, obviously it's a massive powerhouse, but she opens so many stores. Only last year she opened, in 2013, she opened something like 32 stores. She's got 300 stores worldwide, which basically half of the stores it's in Asia Pacific countries. So she definitely tries to reach out a new customer basis, which is not just the traditional man that he's going to wear the traditional perfect suit with a perfect fit and the perfect balance, but also a kind of like more fashionable crowd, which would go for the Hawaiian prints and the coats and all of these elements, which she does it from one season, then she leaves them for a while, and then she keeps back to go and make something really strong and really bold and go out there and goes all over the press. So sort of like it feels that if from one time to the other you go, so last season was like Spring Summer 14, really strong one, so now I think we're going to see like traditional Prada for autumn winter.
Oh, that's interesting. And we've got the orchestra, we've seen everybody Instagramming the orchestra. So should we have a look at the show? Thank you.
And what I also like about Prada is the styling. What I always think is very funny is that the moment Olivier does like a part of the collar outside of the jumper, we'll see it in editorials for the next year. There's so much influence.
Yeah. Well, because it becomes okay. Well, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
She's got these collar ties.
Can we have a little bit of volume, or? Okay, thank you.
The set's really stripped back, and it seems like it's an elevated runway. So the
like
audience is looking at it from, you know how in most
They're
of the
looking
time.
up to it?
Yeah.
So the whole thing is a catwalk.
Yeah, see everyone's
Yep.
Sitting down.
everyone's
And it looks like it's got a texture like carpet, and it's
Yeah.
almost like giving the impression of of horizons.
Of horizons?
Prada's Horizons of Prada. You can see the band just in the pit to the side.
I think she has focused really much on the colors, right? I mean, you see like the tie also, which was like a really big trend. I mean, with everything that has to do with like really sharp collars also and long collars. I think it started like from previous season as well with Ralph Simmons. He went like down with like really long collars and all the bow ties, and now we see a new kind of version of it, which is like really long ties and looks like scarves. And the women's.
She's suggesting something to replace a tie.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And this is obviously part of her resort collection now, right? The women's.
Yeah, I think she has a tendency to kind of link the two together, right? Makes
Which
sense.
it's really smart commercially.
It's like a bridge to the women's.
And it's a commercial move. I mean, so many people seeing the show right now, and she presents her resort collection through menswear, but she links it, as you said.
To be fair, though, I think, I remember seeing menswear shows sort of 12 years ago in Italy, pre-resort collections, and they had
women's.
And I think it's partly because, you know, a lot more men will buy into fashion in Italy, so they want a pretty woman. You know, whereas perhaps the typical British menswear customer is much more interested in pretty boys.
I don't think the Miuccia Prada worries about pretty girls when she's casting the girls in her show, though.
No,
but it definitely appeals
she
to the
didn't tell
female
me.
editors that are writing about menswear.
Yes.
That I have noticed. They're the
Oh, that's
first to tweet
interesting.
about that when they appear.
I wonder if the ideas are developed for both men and women, because when you look at the menswear collection in shops now, and the way they transformed it into women's wear in the shops, you know, with the tropical prints and lots of embroidery. I mean, it can't be like an afterthought. You know, it can't. I mean, it has to be more. There has to be more development to that. So it looks
and ultimately the men's and women's end up sitting on the same shop floor, so they somehow have to fit
right.
together, right?
What do we think to the shapes and colours?
Well, she's definitely kind of done a U-turn, and there's not a print in sight so far, is there?
She's almost using her shirts as a colour palette. I don't know if you noticed, but the collar and the two sides of the shirt are different colours within that palette. But I'm totally sold on this scarf as the shirt thing, because she just brought out a very casual group, and at the beginning it was more formal. And actually in the more formal group, you can imagine someone going to a formal event or an evening do, cocktail, and having that suggestion of a tie, and it really works. And then in the casual one, it suddenly seemed more bandana-ish, and no, it's great.
There's very high waist again on the men.
Yeah.
There's a real theme this season.
High waist, and also quite of like voluminous trousers. I mean, the shape of the trousers, I think in menswear have changed quite a lot, and it was like a big trend that occurred from last season, but it carries on. I mean, you saw it on JW as well. I mean, obviously it has become his signature now with the trousers, but yeah, I know.
I'm glad you said that, because I was bizarrely thinking, do you know what, that's almost a trend that you could trace back to him. Of that ridiculous Bowie level
but also
waist.
Hedi Slimane did that for Dior, like a long time ago. But yeah, I completely agree with you.
I think
now,
Gareth Pure's done that one.
yeah, exactly.
As well.
Gareth has done it, but I think that it does. It does now. When you think about JW, at least for me, you know, I always bring that shape of trousers in my mind.
Well, it's also, I mean, I was looking at last season, and the pleated trouser is also, you know, there was a good sort of 10, 15 years where the penis had disappeared in menswear, and the pleated trouser gives a lot more wave in the front. I know it sounds a funny thing to mention, but you know, we would never accept that breasts had gone. You know, if somebody removed breasts from fashion for 10 years, we'd find it bizarre. And sort of for 25 years before this millennium, the crotch was important. And that pleated trouser sort of brings back the crotch, which I think is interesting.
I think with this show, what else is very interesting actually, now that I'm looking at it, I mean, she is using quite a lot of fur actually, which it is a trend that occurred actually in London menswear. I mean, we've seen like lots of designers using fur this season. I mean, we've seen it on, Christopher Shannon had it on accessories, Sibling used it, Astrid Anderson.
Astrid used both actually. She used real and fake.
Yeah, so, and you see it here as well, again on accessories and collars, on coats and stuff, you see the fur element.
She loves though an animal skin or a fur, you know, she's a, I remember, you know, you tend to have a way of remembering almost everything designers tell you, even though it was 12 years ago, and I remember the way her eyes rolled into the back of her head when she thought about crocodile skin, and she's the same with, you know, all of those things. She loves them.
Doesn't that go back to the era of luxury travel, which essentially Prada was a luggage company, only available to the luxury elite?
Well, also Milan's right next to the mountains.
True.
You know, and it's people forget that Italy has an alpine climate in the north.
I think this is the art of color blocking, right? It's a lot of just...
but it's dazzling in its subtlety,
yeah, it's
isn't
great.
it? You kind of look more closely at it.
Double monk strap shoes.
Quite
Do you
flat
think anyone in
shoes.
the audience has noticed that yet, Imran?
I don't know.
I feel sorry for the audience because there's lots of crisscrossing of this huge expanse of runway, and just wondering, especially where the girl is stood there, can they actually focus on the detail of the costume?
So this is winter, right?
Yeah, I'll just
check
check
it.
14, yeah.
Yeah, there's not much of a platform on those shoes, which is...
It looks so summery to me. So lightweight, everything.
See a lot of wool ties next season.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how we'd feel about this if we had that Gatsby-esque
Music.
accompaniment to it, because I can see it in the women's clearly.
Wow, nice cat
But she
sleeve
does
there.
have that trick of making the woman come across as powerful, doesn't she, as a designer?
She always does it.
Yeah.
She's really extremely interested about
So the
show.
women on this runway are definitely running the show.
Yeah, exactly. Because she always likes like to show the woman as very powerful, and always like the men sort of like she questions always the strength and their power. Even like when she presents like really strong shows for men, it was like the autumn into 2012 that it was like in this court and everyone was wearing like all these regal clothes, but then, you know, like she sort of like playing around it, because if you were seeing closely to the clothes, they were cut out of denim, so kind of like she always questioned the kind of like manpower thing in her shows.
Which a lot of the British designers played on this season, didn't they? Workwear.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they tend to be, boys, rather than powerful men, and not boys in a kind of rock star way. But there's definitely a, you know, she plays a lot on the man being the subject.
Exactly.
But she hasn't used men for 3 seasons, has she? You know, having an older model within it. These are definitely still the boys, aren't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people, because of the sort of length of skirt she often deploys and stuff, think of her as a bit of a frigid. From everything that I've heard, which obviously I can't disclose.
But that's the sexiness of the brand, I think.
Not.
That's the sexiness of Prada, isn't it?
I agree.
It's
the that gives the customer a confidence, and I think confidence is sexy, and I think that's what she's trying to say.
Exactly. What I see is like, I mean, we are watching a menswear show, but see how many women they have come out. I mean, it's almost like feels like it's half and half. I mean, she has like, even though it's a menswear show, but it is very Prada. I mean, with like the colors and the style and the fabrics.
I do think it's quite typical that the menswear is always quite well put together, and I think Miuccia for women often has this disheveled look, whether it's like, you know, a knee sock that is slightly collapsed, or, you know, like the styling of the hair. I do think that even though she plays with, you know, the gender identities, I do feel that the menswear is much more considered.
But that's what we love about her. I think it was spring, summer, not the last show, the show before, where the first outfit was that blue sweater, and you loved it, but you didn't know why you loved it, but you automatically really engaged with this look.
Yeah,
But but actually, she did admit backstage. She was saying, you know, they had to get it so right to get it just so.
I love that.
And even though you know, but as an audience seeing it in the show come out, there is something completely right about it when you see it. But when you start to analyse it, it's like, well, it's just a blue crew neck sweater.
Exactly.
I thought that was amazing though, because it seemed to, there was so much going on with that collection, with its kind of connection to new. There was a lot of bland going on at that time. That Kenzo ad that Dis magazine did had that same feeling of boring
Offers.
of boring, yeah, and like new boring, and that's just really interesting. And there's a lot of that on Instagram as well, of kind of kids
that's
Instagramming.
Prada.
Yeah,
In the end, it is the new boring.
yeah. In the 90s, she was always about that kind of very black. You know, she's got her Baroque side, and then she's got that weird sort of. You know, when she was doing the nylon backpacks, there was a lot of new boring, wasn't there?
And there was a lot of logo as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, the logo was Prada. I mean, it got a bit out of control. You know, it wasn't a brand that you really aspired to at some points because people seemed to buy it for that triangular logo.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be the first knockoff that
And the
people
stripe.
go for.
Have you noticed the trouser lengths are
Yeah.
really long? You know, we saw lots of crop trousers.
But they're long.
They're really long
But that, I
at
think,
high at the
emphasises
waist
the
and
deep-
long at the.
I think that emphasises the waist to
Yeah.
crotch, doesn't it? Because last season they were quite loose, and then the season before that they were very slim, but they were higher than the ankle.
That's
There we
why.
go. Now we can see everything
Yeah.
together.
Well, the ankle is, I mean, I'm flashing my ankles, but I mean, it has got to the point where everybody is flashing their ankle, like, you know.
So she's gonna push the lengths down. I mean, the colors are really brilliant together. When you see them like that, they look beautiful.
But she's amazing on that. I mean, the way that she uses the colors. I mean, the
But I
color
think-
blocking is. She's like on top of her game. I mean, she's got like the whole strength and all the artistic team around her, basically.
She
to,
does
to
have a
do
tremendous
something,
team, doesn't
to
she?
do something like that, because that's not an easy thing to do.
I think that the long length as well, being too long, that's just part of that kind of nonchalant feel. It's almost like the length of the trouser isn't important. It's a bit too long, but that's part of the attitude of dressing.
I think the ties are going to make a huge impact. I can imagine that everyone is going to buy these ties, even if they cannot afford the shirts or the trousers or anything like this. Everyone is going to buy the ties, basically, because this is the piece that is going to be more identified in this collection. And
Topshop, Zara, take note.
and everyone obviously is going to redo it. But yeah, I mean, what we were saying before, Mandi, you know, with like all the shows that it was in London now, and you saw like all of them wearing the Hawaiian shirts. I think that now everyone's going to wear the ties for the next season.
Would you don't sell Prada, do you?
No, I don't.
Well, could you? I mean, I know,
Couldn't.
but could your customers buy into it?
Yes, I think they would, because I think for me, Prada and Ralph Simmons have a really close relationship. I think, in my mind at least, you know, they do something very
And you
similar.
sell Ralph, don't you?
Yeah, and we do sell Ralph Simmons, so they do something very, very similar. I think they have been heavily involved with all this kind of like art world, and you know the way that they present.
Oh,
There
here
she
she
is.
She's wearing like a gypsy skirt.
She stayed a bit more.
It was
in
funny
the
at the Fashion Awards. She was wearing the little feather headdress.
Yeah.
Which was really cute.
She was cute, and yeah, and I think with and Ralph is basically Ralph Simmons. Basically, he's heavily involved with the art scene, and you know he used like Spring Summer 13, the Brian Calvin prints, and then his show was in Gagosian Gallery, and we're sitting there and we had like the Caldera sculptures next to us, which was really amazing as an atmosphere. His previous show, and this show now is going to be amazing on Wednesday. With the collaboration that he's going to have with Sterling Ruby, that he gives him his whole collection. He steps down and he gives even the name, he changed it and he made it for Sterling Ruby. So it's really amazing, and you see this connection between Ralph and Prada. I think, yeah, our customers could buy into Prada easily.
Well, I was thinking about this a little bit. I was having a sort of momentarily caffeine-induced crisis of confidence in Starbucks next door, and I was thinking, you know, perhaps perhaps I just overthink it all, and and it's just Balmain isn't talking about the concept. It's just luxury, and perhaps I just don't understand the customer, and everything's just about luxury. But when you talk about the art world, actually this association with art makes a lot of sense, because people don't buy art for the luxury. They buy art because they want to intellectually engage with it. And
not always.
No, yeah, you're right.
And they're being heavily influenced by a lot of the kind of next generation art collector that's coming through. And they might not appreciate art for the right reason, but actually people like Pharrell Williams are the portal to and Prada are the portal to help them reach art and see that whole world that's out there. I was really keen to know what Imran was thinking of this show, because you were talking about how you were immersed in it and maybe you overthink it, but you've been on holiday and you've just come back, and like you say, we've been completely immersed in Men's Fashion Week, and it's like I can't bear it actually. It's like I'm really just like it's just everywhere, and all the thoughts are just it was brilliant, and it's all going round and round and round. So I was kind of quite jealous when you said that you just got back from your holiday, and I thought, oh well, he's going to give a really pure, objective standpoint.
Well, listen, I mean, I've obviously been on holiday, but I've been looking at some of the shows. The thing that I noticed that came through both in London and in Milan was the kind of big checks on outerwear. You saw that at Xenia yesterday, and you saw that a lot in London. But this has been just, there weren't. I didn't see one print or one pattern in the whole collection. It's all about solid colors and blocking, and it seems like Prada's always, as we said earlier, just kind of a couple seasons ahead. So maybe this is kind of an indication of where everything will be going in a couple of seasons. But it does seem, at least from the little that I've seen of the shows, it does seem
I love that elasticated skirt.
In a different zone than some of the other stuff that we've been seeing. I think maybe I think a lot of people have been getting tired of this whole like tailored cropped blazers, short trousers. You look at some of those images coming out of Pitti Uomo now, and it looks a little bit cartoonish all of a sudden.
They're all wearing capes.
I know. I mean,
in all the street
like
images.
layers and layers and layers of different prints, and to put those outfits together is kind of incredible. But at some point, it looks a bit costumey, and this seemed just a lot more, as
real.
you said, nonchalant, a little bit less.
Yeah, they grabbed it on the way out the house.
It's like I just threw something on,
Well,
and it feels.
It's so codified, that Pitti street style look.
Yeah.
It's so like, it's very much like, hey, this is how a man's allowed to express himself.
Yeah.
Whereas this looks like style.
Yeah, it's just maybe an indication of where things are going. All those Pitti guys might start having a change. Let's see. No, I really like this collection though, and I think if you pick it all apart, if you just take the styling out, there's some really very, very nice commercial pieces here as well. And I think the ties, some of the knitwear, blazers,
And the blazers didn't feel like blazers. I didn't think watching it that you actually noticed the jackets so much. They happened to be there, which is nice, because in the last show she did the double-breasted jacket, which actually in most shows looked a bit weird, like our generation, I don't think we can get our head around this double-breasted blazer so well, but actually the way that she did it, it was black and it had a contrast pant, so it looked quite cool. It had a coolness about it. But in this one, I think the focus for me was very much on the pants. I thought her pants were really spot on, and that was part of that lean silhouette.
There was a pair of boots I saw that I'm coveting.
I agree, and also in shows like Prada, we have to think about also how, if people want to go and buy Prada, if they can afford the full look, in order for them to look good. So, this is a very strong collection, because if you break it down and see like piece by piece, we actually can buy just the trousers, you can buy just the shirt, you can buy just the coat, and you combine it, because in some other cases, in order for something to look good, you have to buy at least half of the look or the full look. So how many people actually really can afford this? So this is kind of like something that is quite important as well to think about.
Do you think maybe as a retailer that a Prada customer is actually going to mix that with their existing Prada wardrobe. Maybe not the obvious pieces, but you know they are, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, it depends on the customer. I think. I mean, there is a traditional customer who I think is going to wear it only with Prada, and I think it's going to be the younger crowd and the kind of like more fashionable on trend crowd that actually they want to take their own take on a Prada piece, and they're going to style it up with the way that they want to present it. So yeah, I think so.
Maarten,
Mhm.
you've been quiet over there.
Yeah, I find it really very difficult. I like the hints at workwear, because I really like Amed who shows in Milan, and he's not showing this season. And those pieces really reminded me of him. I would have
Showing in
liked.
Paris.
Yeah.
Is he? Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's good. So I didn't miss anything yet.
Sorry, the workwear.
Yeah, he was always really good at workwear, and I missed that in Milan this season, and I was hoping Prada would do a bit more of it. What I like about the collection is that it looks like it's been designed for a homosexual man, which I think is very new.
That's interesting.
And I think it's very risky as well, but I think it's very new. It's something that Lanvin does. It's something that Acne Studios do. Like, they design for homosexual men, something that's slightly more feminine, has a nice drape to the fabrics. And I think it's new and it's interesting, it's brave as well, I think. You know, it's a very soft image of a man. Very soft and very, you know, almost gentle.
Definitely not macho.
No, exactly.
Yeah, but I think that the macho man of old, this is the new macho anyway. I don't think macho wants to look macho, do they?
Did you see the Versace collection?
Oh my God. I mean, some people still. I mean,
Yeah, but that's the
Versace.
caricature of macho.
I know, exactly.
I'm not sure if those underpants were macho.
No,
Chap-
but it's
chaps.
just like a different kind of
Chaps are
guy,
wearing
right?
macho.
It's like this, you know, muscular.
Actually, if you think about it, before the Versace show, she was saying that Donatella Versace was saying that her CEO had asked her to put all the accessories in the show. I read that in one of the reviews. You must have read the same one.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if you actually think about this Prada show, there wasn't really that much of those extra bits and
There
bobs
was
in
like
it.
a camera bag or something.
Yeah,
They looked
but
like-
there was a lot of
bags.
bagage in the last
Yeah.
Prada show, wasn't there? There was almost like suitcases, some of those bags that they were carrying.
But it's this kind of man that I kind of miss in London, dressing for this kind of person, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, that's always been my problem. It's like, I feel most designers treat straight men like they're gods, you know, and that on the catwalk we see these cliche images of, you know, heterosexual people, and it's like someone like me, I'm not going to dress like that. I'm not going to wear chaps, obviously, or you know, or even what Astrid does. For me, it doesn't fit in my world. So I do find it incredibly interesting to see Prada where, you know, I want to wear my clothes like this, and it's the same with Acne, and it's the same with Lanvin sometimes. You know, that it has a certain femininity to it, and which appeals to me, and it appeals to other
I think being in
homosexuals.
touch with that feminine side, though, is quite a masculine thing,
Huh.
and maybe it's quite a new masculine thing,
Yeah,
because
you
this
don't
to
see
me
it
looks
a lot.
completely, you know, low key masculinity. We don't want anything outre or obvious in this kind of modern world. This is modern menswear dressing, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's also part of something that you wrestle with as a guy. You know, that I spoke about it weirdly when we were talking about Umit, but that thing of like where you're like, am I dressing like a boy? You know, and we all get stuck in it. That kind especially with the whole sportswear thing. You know, I like sportswear on many levels, but you know, you get stuck in that dressing like a boy thing, and weirdly, by being feminine, that's much more mature, masculine. You know, it's like the father rather than the son, isn't it? Because you can embrace your other side, and I think, yeah, you really do get caught up in menswear, in being, and just as a man, you get caught up in being a boy for a long time, I think. So it's quite nice to have a kind of post-boy, post-street, post-playground kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and she's done the sportswear thing. She's done the pool slides with white socks. This is kind of an appropriate low-key progression for Prada to take.
But I think I kind of believe that her next show is going to be again the playful one, because every other season she does this, she brings it back. So, you know, and it's a very smart way of not losing her customers, because this is sort of for her traditional Prada customer, but obviously with a new take on it. But then I think she's going to do for her next show, she's going to do again the print. She's going to do like the more kind of like pieces that all kind of like the kind of like fashion obsessed people are going like to pick up and want like to wear it, because she kind of like does it and then she leaves it for one season, then she revives it and she does it again. You know,
I think she's the sort of designer, though. I would like to give her the credit that she is the sort of designer where a week before the show, if she's not feeling it or she's gone off the idea, she changed the whole thing. We know that. We wouldn't, you know, I don't think she's as formulaic as that, even though that's been proven the last couple of seasons.
Yeah. It was really good.
Okay. Should we do closing comments?
Yeah, why not?
Let's start with, this is cool, it's like a tombola. Let's start with Stavros.
Am I closing to comment on the show of Prada?
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, I think it was a great show as always, and it was really inspiring. And I think definitely I can see lots of people that they're going to buy into it, and they're going to love it. And as always, you know, she manages to deliver the message, and it's Prada. It's Prada after all. So I think definitely it's going to be successful, and we always are going to like her, you know, for what she delivers.
What do you know, you're in touch with the youth. But through Machine A, I mean, you are like, you know, the representative of a very kind of young take on fashion. You know, you're like sort of like Mr. Ultimate London fashion retailer. What is their take on Prada?
The take of the young fashion crowds.
The 20-year-old St. Martin's student's relationship to Prada, or the Asian Instagrammer's relationship to Prada?
Well, actually, they love her. They adore her. You know, they kind of see her as an idol. You know, I mean, I'm not talking about the customers because obviously I cannot have these kind of conversations with them, so I don't know how they feel about it. But what I'm talking about is like, because I'm meeting with lots of like young graduates of colleges, but also 30-year students. And actually it's very funny because I was like 3 weeks ago to a house of 30-year students from a college, I won't name it, but I was seeing the collections basically, so what they're going to showcase for the end of the year. And they have a Prada framed picture on the living room. So when we sat down, I was like, I saw it and I'm like, why you've got a Prada framed picture on your wall? And they go to her and basically they say she is what we all believe in, and you know, like they really
like a religion.
Yeah, exactly, like a religion, and they see her as this kind of like icon that is like so inspirational to them, and you know, it creates like an inspiration and creates like this kind of feeling. And I think that in terms of the customers, because we are a shop that we are very on trend, and I think, you know, whatever is right now a trend, Prada is always on trend, and you know, especially with Spring Summer 14 collection, that is something that definitely, you know, all our customers have been extremely related to. And I think that with this show, again, as I said, that the collar ties and kind of like some other pieces that I've seen, that it was like the sleeveless bomber jackets and stuff like that, I think they're going to go extremely well. But yeah, they overall they do like Prada, of course.
Cool. Maarten?
Yep. I don't know, I could have done with some more knitwear. But as I said before, I really like the image of the guy that she shows here. I think we need more of that, you know. Because you're not going to wear 5 jackets over each other. This is how we wear clothes. How I want to wear clothes, basically. And I think that's really refreshing to see. And I'm happy that it's not such a loud collection, because every time I go to Prada, you have like 2 rails with loud prints, and then the real stuff starts, you know, that people actually buy, like parkas for 1,400 quid, you know. Like for me, that's always very conflicting. This is a realistic, really great proposal for modern man.
I loved what you were saying about this homosexual man, or this whoever this man is. What other labels are tuning into this?
Well, the thing is, Acne Studios, well, I worked for them, so that's why I pushed them, because I really believe in their philosophy, you know, that you know, there's so much beauty in the way a shirt drapes on the back of a guy, for instance. And with acne, we always did it in viscose, never in silk. So it's a certain guy that wears that. Like, it has a certain sensibility to it, and it's very refined and very interesting. And I think Lanvin also approaches that. Raf Simons, however, and Prada is usually a bit more in the middle, a bit more mainstream, I guess. And companies like Acne, for instance, they focus with everything, with the books that they publish, the magazines that they publish. It's a new market, and it's, you know, it's very much focused on homosexuals, which I think is very new and definitely pushing boundaries. Very interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
You too?
Go on, Imran.
As a runway statement, maybe not my favorite product collection. You know, what I'm usually looking for from Mrs. Prada is something really strong, that instantly recognizable seasonal signature that the in-the-know consumer can instantly spot, even if it's not covered with logos. But I think some really, really great pieces here, and as Maarten said, maybe it'll jibe more easily with some of the like the so-called commercial collection. It actually feels like quite a commercial collection to me. I'm watching out for those ties, and I'm gonna go buy myself a pair of those boots when they come out because I really like them. So yeah, I mean, it's not the one that'll stick in my mind 10 years from now, but I'll be looking out for some of the key pieces next season.
Okay.
I think what Imran touches on is more of a marketing thing as well, because, you know, what you were saying, Maarten, about going into the stores, and there's the bright stuff and then there's the regular stuff. Well, you need that bright stuff to sell the regular stuff as well. You know, that's the thing that sets the rail alive.
Even though it's completely different market.
But what I will say is the colour palettes of the kind of sludgy colours, the kind of beige and moss, the colour of the runway, I think they look quite fresh, and I think the way that she's done this two-tone thing is great. Like the boots that you like, there's a two-tone thing going on with those, and there's a two-tone thing going on with the shirts, and I think it's just a really great low-key. It's strong, but it's very subtle low-key, and I think that's what, you know, modern menswear want to look. They want to wear designer, they want to wear expensive clothing, but they don't want to look obvious at all, and I think this hits the spot, and those pants are perfect.
Do we think there's a bit of Prada perversity in the refusal to do that? I kind of, I'm sick to death talking about Instagram, apologies, but do we think there's a bit of Prada perversity in the refusal to do the Instagram piece?
Meaning?
Refusal to do like the instantly
recognizable thing?
Yeah, even in a set.
I think it's what Stavros was saying earlier. I think she likes to catch people by surprise and change gears. So, you know, after last season's tropical fiesta, this is more like the cool guy sitting in a bar in the corner with the like spotlight on him, you know, smoking a cigar. It's not the guy like rolling around the streets of Rio Carnival, you know. So it's just a different guy for a different season.
Cool.
And maybe a mood that she happens to be feeling right now, and in a way, if anyone is allowed to indulge in a certain mood that they're feeling, she can do that, can't she?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thank you, amazing panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Daryoush.
Thank you, amazing moderator.
Sweatshirt.
Oh, that's it.
That's it.
All right, well done.